We are preparing to live stream. We are preparing to live stream.
And the echo from the delay at YouTube.
It's off now.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
How are you all?
Doing well, thank you.
I missed you on Monday. By the time I got into the meeting, there were about 3 minutes left. But I got my assignment and
Got your homework?
got my homework, and so much was done. Thank you all for all the work that went into that. It made it very easy on me.
Yeah, the team did a great job.
As they always do, it seems.
Right.
And we appreciate it. Do we know how many schools applied for the grant that did not get it?
For just APS 1.
Okay,
Actually, for all of Albuquerque, just 1,
okay.
including the charge. Oh, that wasn't on my list, Lindsay. Lindsay said there's one charter that didn't, and 1 regular school. I didn't know that Sambra didn't. I didn't know they applied. So we're going to go ahead and get started here in 1 minute. Hopefully we will get the rest of the folks. Fall 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we're going to need a couple more folks, 4. But we'll get started right at 8:45. Scott, we have a pretty tight agenda. So feel free to go when at that time.
Okay, I'm just gonna stare at the clock then. My problem is I've been between the Zoom screens and being outdoors so much, I am having a hard time seeing all of a sudden. It's just kind of, you think I'm driving to the other side of town, but Okay, well, I have 8:45 on my computer screen, so I think we should go ahead and start. As I'm told, we have a tight agenda. So I'd like to welcome everyone who's here. Congratulations for making it to the right place. I know there was some concern earlier about whether or not we were in the proper place. Here we are. I would like to welcome our board members. So representing the Albuquerque Public Schools, we have school board members Barbara Peterson and Peggy Mueller-Aragon. From Bernalillo County, we have Commissioner Stephen Michael Casada, Commissioner Adrian Barboa, and Enrique Gradi. From the Office of the County Manager. From the City of Albuquerque, we have Councilor Lancena and Councilor Brooke Bassan, as well as Sasha Pellerin. From the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce, we have Sam Garcia. United Way of Central New Mexico, Rodney Prunty. The University of New Mexico, Marjorie Krebs. New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, Yolanda Montoya Cordova. And from the Albuquerque Teachers Federation, Ellen Bernstein. And for those you don't know, I'm Scott Elder from the Albuquerque Public Schools. So welcome. And I believe that we have one voting item today, and we're looking for approval of the board draft minutes for April. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the draft minutes?
So we may not have a quorum just yet. We might need to push this. I think we need 2 more people.
Okay.
So we can push that and move on to the next. And we will do it when people jump on.
We do that at the end then. In the interim, you can all read the board minutes if you haven't had that opportunity. I did think it was really nice. You pulled the announcements down, but there were some great announcements there, and I really was neat to see some of the great things that are going on at the schools. So our first item today is a presentation from Strategic Doing Committee. And I believe we're going to look at a progress presentation with a little bit of discussion on collaborative leadership. And I believe this is Ms. Krebs and Ms. Peterson. So I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to present the work that we've been doing on our Strategic Action Committee on Collaborative Leadership. We have met several times and have a great overview presentation to present to you. And as always, the staff has done a great job in creating our graphics and helping us organize our thoughts. So thank you very much. So I will introduce all of the speakers, and then speakers, when your slide comes up, if you would just begin when you see your topic. So we will have Jean Saavedra presenting on people. Sasha Pellerin will share about relationships. Barbara Peterson will discuss process and structure. I will discuss culture, and Sandra Slavon will discuss ecosystems. In addition, we will have a practical application sharing from Kelly Boersma and Monique Mills from Grant Middle School. So you can see how our definition of collaborative leadership is seen in action. So each person will share a part of the definition, and that's been the heart of our work so far, is just coming up with a definition. And then we will have concrete examples periodically from Kelly and Monique. So we hope that this presentation will help you clarify what the definition of collaborative leadership is. So we'll begin with people.
Good morning, and thank you. So I'll go ahead and start with people. People show up with yes in your heart and deep desire to work with the community and cultivate the ability to reach out and bring people together. What collaborative leadership is showing up to make a difference. What it isn't is showing up to collect a paycheck for personal gain.
Okay, next slide, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about relationships. So this is intentionally cultivating relationships that exhibit trust and communication. And so examples of this could be at all levels of how this organization works. So for example, it could be a family and a coordinator. It could be a coordinator and staff on community schools. And it could also even be the city and the county and what we're doing on the board now.
So we're very excited to have Monique Mills and Kelly Boersma with us today, the principal and community school coordinator at Grant Middle School, who are going to give us some real life examples of what these two concepts of collaborative leadership actually look like in a community school. Kelly's going to start by talking to us about people and relationships. So Kelly, could you talk to us about, as a community school principal, how people and relationships are important to you in collaborative leadership?
I sure can. Thank you, Deanna, for inviting us to do this. People in relationship, it starts with the coordinator and the principal building a strong relationship of trust. One way I sustain that relationship is by meeting every single week with a coordinator. In these meetings, we are thought partners and we discuss issues within the community school, and we plan the weekly or the monthly council agenda. In order for the community school to demonstrate great collaborative leadership, we need people who are open and willing to learn about and implement community school strategies, both in school and in the organization where they live and work. One way to do this is to include questions within the hiring process to ensure that teachers coming in will be willing to learn and open to what it means to work at a community school. When I became principal here at Grant 2 years ago, I did not have an understanding of what a community school was or how to lead it, but I was willing to learn. An important character trait that a school principal should have is a willingness and desire to learn and make a difference in the community. In fact, I learned a lot from Mo, our community school coordinator. As the principal, it is important that I trust the work of the community school coordinator. When staff come to me with questions about what the community school coordinator is doing, or questions about whether things are being followed up, I can immediately tell them that Mo is on it, that she has engaged the right partners, and that I trust her completely to facilitate the best decision for our community school.
That's great. Thank you, Kelly. Barbara, I believe you're next.
Okay, so my focus is process and structure. Create, integrate, and reimagine processes and structures that foster authentic relationships, encourage innovation, support integrated decision-making toward a single vision. I think the thing that's really critical about this is that whether we're conscious of it or not, almost all of our institutions, whether it's a small micro system like a school or a large system like the entire district, is sort of automatically top down and really tend to create silos. And so we need to be really intentional, because that's absolutely not what collaborative leadership is. Collaborative leadership is really making sure that there's equitable voice, that we start with questions, not with answers, that we do things that integrate all these different systems. And because this really and truly is sort of the critical heart that makes community schools different from just an assortment of providers and services, but really goes to something much deeper about engaging the community as a whole. We can't do that without being very intentional. And some of the intentionality can be as simple as making sure that there's both staff, principals, administrators, coordinators involved, both with the council, the community school council, and the instructional council. So there's that cross integration. I think Kelly spoke to just the importance of building trust between principal and coordinator, but also between staff and families and the partners that are part of the community school council. So all of those things are not necessarily intuitive for us, because it is a step away from what we've done traditionally. So having these very deliberate ways of thinking, how do we communicate? What do we have in place to bring people in, to make it welcoming, to make sure that there's that cross-pollination between groups within the school community is really critical.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, like Barbara Peterson said, strong processes and structures are key to a successful community school. One process that our community school council developed are Google Forms that students and parents can fill out in order to get help from our Family Resource Center, as well as students receiving help during the school day. This also assists me in gathering data for the biggest need for our school, as well as our community. An example of this is our community school created a survey to get student input or student voice for what they want to do or see in next year's after school programs. The survey included perspectives of all of our community school partners, school staff, and students. And once the survey was complete by the council, it was then sent back to our students for final approval. These type of processes and structures have helped to make our collaborative leadership practice run smoothly. With the ability to gather many different voices and input, it also ensures that our practice is authentic by honoring that stakeholder decisions are not just advisory, but are a true part of the decision-making process within our school.
Thanks, Monique. So I will speak about culture. And our definition of culture is centered on the fact that the culture should foster a foundation of relational trust that cuts across all levels, should develop systems that foster communication and conflict resolution, collective sense of belonging and acceptance, and the culture should also grow leaders at all levels who create space for contribution to collective success. And I know many of you have heard the phrase that culture eats strategy for lunch. So you cannot fix a school with just putting in different things. It has to become part of, this is the way we do things here. And I think Monique's example is an excellent one of shifting the culture of decision-making to a collective, collaborative one where we always ask input of everyone before we make big decisions. So that was a great example. So collaborative leadership is asking always, has the community weighed in? And that's exactly what that example shared with us. Taking time for consensus, seeing conflict as productive and approach from a place of love, and also focusing on consistency and shared expectations and understanding, instead of where some cultures lead that decisions are reactionary, made quickly in silos, not caring what anyone else thinks, and that conflicts damages those relationships instead of is seen as a place where we can all learn and grow. And next, we have ecosystem.
So ecosystem, the definition that we came up with is the school is prioritizing the school's role as a contributing member of the community with children and youth at the center. And equitable networks of mutually beneficial supports are aligned toward a community-wide vision. And so when I think back to the graphic that we shared with you at the beginning, it's a spiral staircase. And the spiral staircase has many entry points. It's not linear on purpose. We can move up, we can move down. And to me, it represents DNA. And so this, what we were talking about, what Marjorie just mentioned in terms of culture, and this is the way that we do things, to me, it's in our DNA. And so when we have this true ecosystem that we've intentionally worked to construct, relationships move beyond being transactional, and they're truly transformational. And they're symbiotic, they're interdependent, and each organization, whether it's a school or a community partner, each person, whether it's a family, a student, a staff member, all of those entities are always on our radar. We're all part of this really well-functioning system. So collaborative leadership is open and fluid communication among everyone and systemic collaborative leadership from school to school and then across school levels. And what it is not information gatekeepers or schools, people, entities working in isolation.
Thank you so much. Kelly, can you talk to us as a community school principal again about culture and ecosystem and community school leadership at Grant?
Yeah, I sure can. I really like that idea of the DNA, that it's in your DNA, because I think that talks a lot about Grant. Grant Middle School has always had the idea of community schools in its bones, and it shows. For those of you who don't know, Grant has been a community school for many years, and long before I have been here, long before Mo has been here, and it's evolved over our lifetime. Teachers are invested in aligning their curriculum with expanded learning opportunities, and all the staff, from custodians to nurses to the administration, are all open and willing to adjust their perspectives and practices to ensure that the community school strategies are implemented. One key aspect of this, in my eyes, that really hones in on the success of community school is the fact that when people leave the school, they remain connected. One of my favorite things about being the principal of Grant is the community that we have. Retirees, alumni, community members are all regular attendees at our community school council and contribute to the mutually beneficial partnerships that develop as part of a deep culture of a community school. They even promote and celebrate us on social media. Grant is part of a larger ecosystem of its community. The school offers a venue and space for the community to participate, whether in our council meetings, campus events, Chinese language and cooking schools, and other opportunities. As a school, we feel supported by our community, but we also support our community. And it's been a wonderful experience to share my leadership responsibilities with this ecosystem.
Thank you, everyone. I want to say that I did have the pleasure of being the very first community school coordinator at Grant Middle School. So way back in 2007. It was a good, I spent a lot of time with Ed Briggs. So we really appreciate y'all taking the time and all the thought that has gone into collaborative leadership, knowing that this is truly the pillar that makes the difference, right? Every school has programs and services. Every school, really does keep children at the center, right? But not every school does it in the way a community school does. And I think that there's been a ton of work, and in addition to everyone's jobs that they, actually get paid for. And we really, from the ABC team, really want to appreciate everyone's time and effort. And we'd also like to open it up to the rest of the board for any questions or comments regarding what you've heard today.
Hi, if I can, this is Adrienne Barboa. Yeah, thank you so much. I love this presentation. I love hearing about the work. I just want to mostly appreciate y'all. I think for me, you're right, the biggest point, and I love that you all highlighted, right, that it takes real time to do this. And I think we often talk about the time it takes, and then and when people are thinking about implementing this, that like, yes, it takes that time, but it pays off, right? At least that's what it sounds like that you all are saying, and I think I believe in. And I wonder, when we think about like we just mentioned that it's one of the first community schools, been around, would you say, like, to the effectiveness that you are at being a collaborative partner now, what has been the sort of time frame? So we have a realistic thought of, like, this school says they want to do this tomorrow, to get to a place of effectiveness. Like, how long would you say it really took you, or what was the key measure? Like, was it about leadership really joining in, or what did it take to get there?
Well, so that's a great question. I mean, I've been at Grant for 7 years, 2 years as principal. This is my second year. We, like Danette said, we've been a community school for ever. But, you know, as far as my leadership, I really feel like I'm learning as an assistant principal what the community school was, but really then just being willing to sit down and learn about it. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that if I were to give advice to any principal trying to implement this, I think it's just really have an openness and a willingness to know that you don't know everything, and that you need to be willing to work with the people, you know, in the room. You know, Mo is great. She's been in community schools a lot longer than I have. And so I had to be willing to learn from her. And I think, and also trust her, because I mean, there's a lot of things that, you know, Mo said, hey, can I do this? And another principal might have said, I don't know, like, you know, but I was like, sure, go for it. Like, and it's worked out really well. A good example is like, she does our Sunday messages. Every Sunday, Mo sends out a community message. And I've given her access to that to do it. And it's great. It's amazing. It's really helped our community. But if I was unwilling to do that, it would be a roadblock. And I think for my willingness, and also knowing that I can't do everything. I mean, I think that's the other thing. And as soon as you have that willingness, I don't think it takes a lot of time. I just think it's really about building those partnerships and having two people that work well together, and a principal that's not afraid to kind of give up the reins a little bit, you know. And I think that that's really where it started with, you know, I think Mo was surprised when I would be like, yeah, sure, go for it. Like, I trust you. And it's worked out really well. And I think that that's just my personality, but I think that's what it takes is a leadership that's that. Everything else can be built around it, but I think that's really the foundation.
Yeah,
I could add, Commissioner Barboa, I think that one of the other things to always keep in mind about community school development is that every time things change, the development can also change. So sometimes we look at it may take 2 months to really get rolling, but then there might be a shift in the community, there might be an incident in the community, there might be a shift in leadership, and then we start over every time. And I think that it's really important in community schools that we know that we're never there, right? Like it's always this conscious effort to keep moving forward towards a common result. And I think that Kelly makes a really good point that it's about that openness. And when we say you have yes in your heart in community schools, it's about you walk in with that and then we just go for it. And I think that we spend a lot of time trying to also really work with like the state to understand that you can't just say, here's the money, and in 2 years it's going to be X and it's going to stay that way forever, because this is it's a people-driven process. And so I think it's a really good question, but also something really that we have to keep in mind as we look at what is a successful community school, and helping to advocate for that we define success. It's not just attendance, behavior, and grades. Does that matter? Of course. Is that important? Of course. But there's also other things that really determine a successful school. And I think that's one of the reasons we're going through this exercise, is to talk about, you know, what does collaborative leadership look like? What does it not look like as the cornerstone? And also to know that with both robust implementation and this committee as well, that we know that it's not being implemented with consistency across all 39 schools in the ABC network, and that we're really trying to get to a place where we can help people do that. Because if you walked into a school and you didn't know what this was, and you weren't really, you know, weren't really clear, and all of a sudden people are like, we want you to share your leadership, and you know, the panic sets in with someone who's a new principal, that this is like, you know, Kelly said, it's just my personality to be like, okay, let's try it. There's a certain level of trust and fear that kind of go back and forth with sharing true decision-making power within a school, as well as you've got, you know, anywhere from 15 to 80, in some cases 100 teachers in a school in some of our community schools, and that we're really hoping to improve the training around this topic with the information that has come from this committee and the other committees, so that we can really prepare people to do this well, and to understand what's a realistic expectation, what isn't, how do we move forward together, how do we truly include community voice in a safe and respectful way on both sides. And those are, so that's part of why we're doing these presentations, to make sure we get feedback from the board on and clarify any questions if things aren't clear. So we really appreciate everyone and of course the board's time and really thinking through what you're hearing today and things that will come.
And thanks. Ken, just another follow-up. I think I believe all, or at least most of the board, should have attended some of those racial justice appetizers or things that I think we all agreed to being. And, you know, I just like to say out loud, right, that collaborative processes, entry points for folks to be able to have ownership and in their schools, and it is a move towards racial justice. And for schools that are doing this, I'm like looking ahead, and so I don't mean this critically at all. I think for schools that are building this great foundation, for schools that are doing this effectively, I would ask, and maybe you're already doing it, but I would ask, right, like, you know, what does participation look like? Is it the same people? Because I even question our government sometimes, like when they say we're throwing a big town hall, and we sent out an email. Well, only people with emails know about the big town hall, and people that are active and care about politics are going to come to the town hall. But you're never going to get my sister, who really cares about her kids and but could care less about politics and thinks town halls are. So I guess it just, like, as we keep, like you said, improving, keep growing how we do this, think about this as a racial and equity measure that you all are doing, really seems like doing well at this point. Like, how are we reaching those that didn't get our notice or don't get or aren't already really actively involved, because our intention is to think that they don't want to be involved because they don't come. But I have learned over time, right, like everybody wants to be involved. Everybody wants to have a voice. We just have to meet them where they're at. So definitely not critical. I think this is beautiful. I'm just like, how do we keep pushing to keep doing better and more? So thank you.
And Commissioner Barbeau, I would say that actually you're spot on. And that's the process that we as a district find ourselves engaged in is, okay, so we've set up systems of time or systems over time that haven't necessarily gotten to the people that really do want to have a voice. And I think what the community schools have done is they've developed relationships with people so that it's not just a email or a sign, there's actually people talking about it. So it's something that we need to learn as a larger system, and it's something that we're still trying to work through, because this is systems that have been built up for a very long time, and it's hard to disrupt them. And it's sort of similar to what Principal Boersma was talking about, the willingness to let go of some of the authority. That's an uncomfortable thing to do for people that have been charged with, you will manage this school, this organization, and if something goes kablooey, you're to blame. Yeah, but I had shared leadership. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, you know. So, and that's something we have to work with all our principals, and the community schools have provided some guidance on that. Is how do we begin to move towards a more communal structure, and it's very hard. So, thank you for the question you asked.
If I could just add to, this is a complex topic, right? Collaborative leadership, and breaking it down to concepts is also about breaking it down into when the sustainability committee starts looking at community school friendly practices and policies, utilizing some of the work coming out of robust implementation and collaborative leadership to look at just what Superintendent Elder said is, what do we have in place that supports doing this well, and what do we have in place that gets in the way, and what's changeable and what isn't, and how do we deal with both of those constructs, right? And I think that it's incredibly important. I think we as ABC team train coordinators in doing just what you're talking about. Like, how do you find the folks that aren't normally at the table? How do you connect with them? So I think some of our South Valley schools have done a really great job working with Albuquerque Interfaith and looking at their house meetings to really try to engage and build relationship between the staff and community that doesn't necessarily show up at the school, even in a non-COVID time, and working on that. And I think, as we move forward, some of some of your expertise and some of the other folks on the board who have really done a lot of community organizing at times could be really helpful in making sure that we are reaching the folks that don't tend to have a pathway in for whatever reason. It's not because people don't want to, and we definitely recognize that, but it's also hard. They're hard to find and reach when we don't have a really, really clear plan. So I really appreciate your comments. Thank you. Superintendent, if you want to do, if there are no other questions, I will be quiet, but after that we could do the vote while everyone's here.
All right, I was going to say, I think we have maybe time for one more question, if there was one. All right, I think that was appropriate wait time. Thank you all very much for your presentation. I took quite a bit from it, and thank you to our special guests who lent that school perspective, which is what I really needed. So thank you very much. We did have one voting item earlier, and it was the draft minutes. Now that we have a quorum, I ask, does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes? At this time, I'll accept a motion for approval of the minutes from April's meeting.
I'll move for approval. This is Barbara.
I'll second.
And that was second by Sasha. All in favor, if you would raise your hand in the video screen there. And then all, thank you for waving your fingers, that helps. And all opposed. All right, that passes. Thank you. Moving on, we have some progress reports. And I believe first is our equity and social justice training update from Mr. Prunty.
Thank you, Scott. So the ABC anti-racist training is off to a good start. So 100% of ABC staff have completed Series 1 of the Soulfire Consulting Group's DEI United trainings with United Way, the Albuquerque Community Foundation, and a number of nonprofit learning partners. 5 team members are currently participating in Series 2 with Soulfire that started this week. And it's 5 because those were the numbers of slots that were devoted to ABC staff. 64% of board members have completed or are scheduled to participate in the RT appetizer trainings and or the DEI United trainings with Soulfire. 73% of ILT members have completed or are scheduled to participate in the RD appetizer trainings and or the DEI United trainings. And 31 of the 39 ABC Network Community School Coordinators participated in RD community conversations, as well as a microaggression training with Soulfire. APS and the committee are identifying future anti-racist and anti-oppression trainings for community school coordinators. While continuing to support the rollout of these anti-racist and anti-oppressive trainings, the Equity and Social Justice Committee is now digging into key areas to identify recommendations for changes and or additions to push policies and practices into more anti-racist and anti-oppressive spaces. We're currently reviewing the coordinator scope of practice and data gathering reporting practices and tools. And the committee has identified a concentric circle approach to looking at changes to policies, practices that impact community schools. So this means that starting with the smallest circle, in other words, areas where the ABC board can have a direct impact, such as the scope of practice and ABC data gathering reporting practices. So that's where we would start. Then the committee plans to expand to larger circles that encompass broader systems, starting with board entities, so APS, City of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, et cetera. And then the committee plans to make recommendations for changes to the ABC board in the small circle. So for the larger circles, the committee will bring ideas and thoughts to the board to help identify ways that ABC can advocate for shifts in policies and practices to ensure the systems interact with community schools in a more anti-racist anti-oppressive way. One of the other pieces that we also discussed was expanding the committee to increase community representation. And so we have developed a working list of folks in the community that would help support the work of the committee. And I'm pleased to announce that we do have 2 new committee members that have agreed to join, and they are in the process of being onboarded. And that's my report.
Sorry, thank you. I do have one question, and I don't know if anyone else does, but what is Soulfire, or who is Soulfire? What is that training provided by?
Yeah, Soulfire is a consulting group that has done a lot of work with United Way and Albuquerque Community Foundation. So their primary practice and focus is really on anti-racism training, as well as examining internal practices and making recommendations so that organizations are more equitable and just in how they operate internally.
Excellent, thank you. Now, on your slide here, it says next week we have an update on robust implementation, but on my agenda, I have Ms. Bernstein doing an update on robust implementation. So is it today?
They are going to do a progress report today, and then next month they'll do a full presentation.
And Ms. Bernstein.
Good morning, everybody. We have had great conversations in robust implementation. Are we going to share the slide? Whoever is in charge of
it coming up?
There you go. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. What we've done is really in-depth analysis of the national standards for community schools. And those are part of when Danette sent out the reminder, and we have the agenda and the minutes. We also have a link to the national standards for community schools. And when you read through them, which I hope you'll do before we meet again and have our in-depth presentation, what you're going to see is a standard, you're going to see a descriptor for it, and then you're going to see all these indicators. And what we were able to do in our committee is go through all the indicators and think about what implications are there for our robust implementation here. What do we need to focus on? What are we doing well? What do we still have to start paying attention to? And how do the national standards need to be morphed a little so they fit our work a little better? And so you can see we've got planning, coordinating infrastructure, sustainability, student-centered data, continuous improvement, and of course, collaborative leadership, which connects, as we've been saying all along, with the presentation you heard earlier today. So we're very excited to be able to, oh, and also, sorry, more standards, family engagement, community engagement, student-centered learning and development, and health and social services and supports. Or is that all of them? I think it is. Okay, so I just wanted to say that we're gonna give you an in-depth presentation about implications that we found and next steps for our work so that we can kind of have language and I guess guideposts for all the different schools as they work towards implementing community school strategies more fully and robustly. Is robustly a word?
It is. It is today.
Just checking. That's it. If you have questions, I'm here to answer them.
Anybody have any questions?
If I could just add, I think this is another one where we're just so appreciative of the deep work that's gone into it and excited to hear more in depth from them next month. But again, we have 39 schools, and you're going to see a list in the back end announcements today of new and upcoming community schools. That we want the approach to be local and driven by that school, but we also know that in order to provide appropriate technical assistance and support, as well as consistency and understanding for sustainability, that we need the guidepost. We need to know that you're going to see a baseline of something in every community school within the ABC network when we do our work together. And this also allows us to leverage both internal capacity of APS, of ABC, of the city of Albuquerque, when we're talking about all of the different complexities of a community school. So this work really, in the past, 5 years ago, we had about 15 schools. It was pretty easy to navigate. But now we're moving into a space of really getting into a significant number of schools. It's just about 50% of the entire state. So thank you so much, the committee.
Thanks, Danette. And our committee is serious about everybody doing some homework. Excuse me. If you would download the national standards and just at least skim through so you get a feeling for what they say, what they are, and the indicators, I think you'll see a lot of connections to the work that you're doing, but it would really help for your understanding if you look at them before next month.
That'd be great. Perhaps we can share the link to those standards in the chat so that people make sure they get to the right spot. The internet's full of many strange and wonderful corners, and I would hate someone to go down the wrong path. So that was a very mixed metaphor. Anyways, so at this point, we'll move on to community school strategy bright spots. And Ms. Townsend, and I am going to have to step out at this time because we have graduation and I have to rush to the west side of Albuquerque to celebrate a milestone. So thank you all very much and have a great rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
I think, sorry if I was showing video that I wasn't intending to, but like my video got turned off. I just wanted to comment on thanks again for all this hard work, and not enough appreciations can be said. It makes me think of when we talk about robust implementation that like in the last presentation, Monique was a key to that. It also makes me think of like leadership, like somebody's leadership has to be willing, and some folks come with a skill set that you can't really replicate, but or that is just maybe natural to them. Like it sounds like Monique was a leader and that maybe some of those things were natural to her. I wonder if like in this process, do you guys ask like leaders like that to document their way for maybe other leaders who have a desire to, but it's not their natural thinking, like this is how I followed robust implementation for my school. And of course it might look different. Everybody's leadership looks different, but just as a guide, not try to add more work to folks.
Well, so this link between our instructional councils and our community school councils, I think is essential to helping develop a sense of shared leadership, because what we focus on with our instructional council training is how to work together, how to make decisions through consensus, how to openly share thinking without dominating, all of those kinds of structures that we've been working on for decades to develop in APS. We do that work with especially with new principals coming into schools, and it's an important link for a new principal or I guess experienced principal, and other people can speak to this, to start to learn how to have those collaborative conversations, to share leadership. And I think there's a carryover for community school councils and the idea of shared leadership in our work there. Does anybody Anybody school-based want to elaborate on that or respond to that? Or tell me I'm wrong? I think that's that.
Well, there is a Ana Ortero in the chat said that ABC gives us spaces coordinators to meet and share. Sorry, I lost it. To share best practices and strategies. So yeah, those are, thank you, Ellen. And thank you, Ana Ortero.
Thank you. Deanna's going to go ahead and put both the standards in the chat, and then also for our newer board members, there was a video made about Monique's story. For those that don't know, Monique started out as a parent at Manzano Mesa that was in need of support from her community school. And it's a lovely story and an amazing example of what can happen in a community school when we are robustly implementing and truly using collaborative leadership. And it's not the only story we have, of course, just happens to be the one that we have a video link to. But please check it out, because let me tell you why. So we want to celebrate, we have 5 community school coordinators who are transitioning out of their jobs this year. Many have been around for quite some time, particularly Beatrice and Monique. I don't even know how many years, it seems like always they have been around, but we do want to recognize their incredible contributions to Hayes, Beatrice Valencia Riano at Hayes Middle School, Diana Valenzuela at Doranis Elementary School, Kim Obregon at Emerson Elementary School, Monique, of course, from Grant, and then Stephanie Pearson at Kirtland Elementary School. We greatly appreciate your contribution to the community school development in our community, not just at your schools, but everything that you've given to make things happen. Some of you started out, 2 of you at least started out as volunteers, actually 3, because Beatrice was also volunteering with community schools prior to becoming coordinators. And you did lots of great work in your communities and the communities that you serve now. And we wish you nothing but the best in your next adventure, and really cannot say enough about your passion and commitment to your schools, but more importantly, the people that are living in those communities and going to those schools. I don't know if there's any comments that want to be shared with folks. I'm sure there are some in the chat. I've got 42 screens going, so I'm having a hard time tracking.
There's lots of appreciation in the chat, and I just want to say out loud, thank you. And wow, I was thinking, wow, Monique's a great leader. They have such a great leader, and I'm sort of sad to see her go. Best hopes to you, Monique, and all these community school coordinators, and hope we find some good folks to fill your shoes.
So one of the things that I want to really give high praise to, the census count just came in, and New Mexico was one of the few states that had a higher count than what we had feared for. And a huge part of that work was done by our community school coordinators, of reaching out and making sure that we got community response to the census. And Beatrice chaired the International District Complete Count Committee, and her enthusiasm and just dogged pursuit of everything that needed to be done played a huge role. So all 5 of these folks are going to be missed, but I especially worked with Beatrice and Kim, and their schools will definitely be missing them.
Absolutely. And I think what we did see, and Jeff isn't, I think Jeff is still he's not up on the panelist side, but Jeff Anderson led some of the ABC just data tracking and things around the complete count, and every track where they focused on community school, where the community schools were, had a greater count than in the past, which really, I think, speaks to the relationship, because our schools are, of course, in hard to count tracks, what would be considered hard to count tracks. And the coordinators did a fantastic job in making that happen. And Beatrice led the charge. So thank you. When we talk about, sometimes when we talk about what makes a successful community school, it's hard to grasp things like that. And it's hard to help people understand, particularly at the highest decision-making level in our state, that it's not always about that specific outcome that happened for that specific student, even though overall transforming education is what we're trying to do. But transforming the complete count also increases so many opportunities within our communities. And I think when we talk about data and whether or not community schools are effective, quote unquote, that's why it's hard to capture, because that's a huge thing. That translates into millions of dollars in our state that goes to folks that need it the most. And so, I think as our planning and our strategy sessions get more and more into data and outcomes as we move forward in our process, these are things that we're going to really want to be able to capture, because the success comes in many ways, right? Ultimately, we want students to do better in schools, but we also want to see our communities thrive so that our students can do better in school. So thank you so much to all of you. As you'll see, I think you can see on the screen, we've got a few announcements and some really cool stuff. So Los Padillas Community School had a cohort of 31 students who submitted for their bilingual seal. 12 of them received that seal, 18 will receive special honors, which is an enormous leap over the last 2 years in their applications as well as success rates. So this is fantastic. Pajarito has a 5th grade student run food pantry that happens over the summer. It's part of their transition into middle school, and they will be doing an on-site food pantry throughout the entire summer. And please contact Maria Marquez, who is the community school coordinator there, on details, because they do have some process that you have to go through if you have families out there. Albuquerque High School will be they'll have their school-based health center open this summer, open to all APF students. It'll operate Monday through Thursday, 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. All of the services, behavioral health, primary care, will all be available. And they will be doing sports physicals, and the appointments are both virtual and in person. So if folks know of people that need some services, then please put that out there for them. They can do it in the way that they feel most comfortable. Also exciting, the state announced their New Mexico PED planning grant recipients. 11 of 21 awards will go to Albuquerque Bernalillo County schools. As you can see within the traditional set of APS schools, Del Norte, East San Jose, Edward Gonzalez, Helen Cordero, Reginald Chavez, and Truman Middle School will all be receiving a planning grant. So the ABC team in partnership with the Student Family Community Supports Division is working on how we help those folks get ready to really embark on a deep planning process to really set their community school strategy and implementation plan up for success. There are also some charter schools, Albuquerque Bilingual Academy, ACE Leadership, Albuquerque Sign Language Academy, Gordon Burnell, and Mark Armijo Academy all received planning grants as well. We do support some of the charter schools if they so ask. We've been trying to help who we can, because it's also important to us. Any school in Albuquerque, we want to see implementing as robustly as possible and really implementing the strategy. So we have opened our ABC doors to whoever wants that in our communities. I don't know if there are any other announcements. Please feel free to put them in the chat. We wanted to make sure that we had time, so we wanted to make sure there was a slide for it. Any comments or thoughts that would like to be shared by the board? Fantastic. So look at this. You are actually potentially getting 3 minutes of your life back today. I want to just remind everyone that our next meeting will be June 10th from 8:45 to 9:45. We do open the meeting at 8:40 so people can jump in and get situated. And also a reminder that July, we do not have a board meeting. So just in case anybody, we know there's always constant confusion with calendar invites. So the July meeting we don't do meetings in July. We will have one in June where collaborative leadership will give an in-depth presentation on their work, and we will have updates from a couple of the sustainability and I forgot the communications committee and where they're at with their work. And any last announcements or anything that the board would like to share prior to us closing the meeting? Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate you. And 5 minutes back in your day, you can actually run to somewhere and get a drink of water, a cup of coffee before your next Zoom meeting. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day.